Okay. Okay. Good evening. Call to order. Call to order. Thank you. Welcome to the Laramie City Council work session for Tuesday, September 9, 2025. We will begin this work session this evening with public comment on non-agenda items. Is there any public comment on non-agenda items? Yes, Chris? And if you can state your full name for the record, please.
Okay, thank you. My name is Christopher Diley, and I'm homeless here in Laramie. And I'm speaking on the Human Rights Commission that was formed last year. And I just want to thank Nancy Oakland Potter, the executive assistant, for working with me on an issue that I was involved in, where I think where it could be helpful to have people trained in de-escalation of homeless individuals having meltdowns in public. And I explained a situation I just experienced. Well, if I could just back up and point out and quote that the Laramie Human Rights Commission states, quote, "It shall be the purpose of the commission to uphold Wyoming's constitutional declaration that all members of the human race are equal by working to defend the dignity and worth of all people and promoting inclusion, equity, and mutual respect among community members," end quote. So I think that's very helpful to keep in mind when that if people are trained in de-escalation, they can. It's with a good purpose. You know, it's acknowledging that we're going to be dealing with very difficult people. Me, I'm one, because I'm under enormous pressure, and it's getting worse just because of the circumstances that homeless people are experiencing in this country. And so we can expect to have more people to have meltdowns like I did, and it would be helpful if people are on their toes and aware, and to, you know, try to be understanding of the person. Because I know I was really offensive because I was filled with so much negative emotion when I spoke at the soup kitchen. But I just wanted to say that the way that they responded I felt was inappropriate and could be improved upon. And I don't want to go into the details because we're limited on time, but I just want to say that there's one last part here. This is important to keep in mind as well, is that I was in Bellingham, Washington, and the Union Gospel Mission director spoke from the podium and said, we have to get the homeless off the streets, out of the libraries, into the day center by day and the mission by night. So he was talking about the Union Gospel Mission Director was calling to have the removal of the homeless from society. So I think that can be the problem, a factor involved, is that the very people that are providing the services are enemies of the homeless. They don't believe that we should have equality. They believe that we don't believe, they believe that we don't belong in public. So I think we've got to look at the dichotomies involved and know that there's a lot of combustion, and just try to bring some peace to this. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And then you've directed your letter to the Human Rights Commission, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so then this will be forwarded to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any other public comments on non-agenda items? Ready? Seeing none, we will move to our first work session, which is community partner funding application and award process. And I'll turn this over to the City Manager, Janine Jordan.
Good evening, Council. Thank you. As you know, since, as far as anyone in this room knows, since the inception of the general excise purpose tax in Albany County, which I believe was in the early 80s, since that time, this city has made a portion of that funding available to local agencies that provide social services, recreation, and quasi-governmental types of services. Wyoming statutes do, of course, allow for that, and we call that our community partner Partner Funding Program. So this evening, Council had requested some months back in the spring when you were reviewing applications from community partner agencies that at some point this year, prior to the start of the next funding cycle, that we would review the application process with you. So with us tonight, we have Nancy Oakland Potter, who of course is the Executive Assistant to the City Manager. Nancy administers that program on behalf of the city, and frankly on behalf of the Board of Commissioners in the county as well. The city and county have for at least 25 years that I can personally vouch for shared the administration of that funding program, and it is administered by Nancy in our office. So Nancy's going to talk to you about the process. She's going to share with you some of the more recent modifications to the process that we've made. For those of you that are new to council, it is not unusual that every year or two the council asks, hey, let's talk about the process, let's talk about how the application looks. So what you're doing tonight is, again, part of a long history. And I think Nancy will talk to you about the most recent changes that we've made to the process, which was about a year and a half ago, I believe. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nancy. Thank you.
Good evening, Nancy Oakland Potter. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Vice Mayor and council members. As you can see on our program overview, the city has been very generous and significantly giving monies out to our community partners, totaling over $1.2 million just in the past 5 years, with this recent award being $231,272, and we award that to those civic organizations, recreational and social agencies, and those are all denoted on the application. They let the council members know where they kind of fit in, how much money they want. We have done a number of changes, and a lot of that was born from council members, also from a survey that we did in 2023 of our past applicants. And so a lot of that had to do with an extension of the application deadline, because ours kind of fell in at the same time that other grants had their deadlines. So we changed that. We added in the type of organization on there, whether they were a nonprofit or not-for-profit, those being two different entities, a little same but different. In Section 1, we added how many grants they have successfully funded, just so that we have an understanding of, what the funds are that they're seeking for and what other support they're also seeking. So it kind of helps with the, review and awarding processes that you guys ultimately go through. Section 3, there was a discussion point on how your project aligns with the city goals, the city council goals that you guys develop every year. And like I said, we did the survey in 2023. For the most part, people were very satisfied with how our application process went, but we also considered some of the suggestions that they made. And then also, along with surveying our applicants, we also reached out to our other cities within Wyoming who do similar grant type programs, and Laramie falls within the same, parameters, if not a little bit more, right? So that's our first round of changes that we did, and including what % of the budget specific to the Laramie region does their request amount. So we kind of started asking a little bit more details, because again, those details help you with the distribution of those awards. Any questions on those first round? Yeah, go ahead.
Councilor Newman.
Oh, a question, I have a comment.
Sure.
So people who are red-green colorblind, the highlighted text the text is red and it's highlighted yellow, that's really hard for us to see, and it hurts our eyes, just in case somebody else says something about it.
Is that on the application, Councilor Brandon?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, the checklist, those two colors specifically together.
Okay.
I just throw those in the trash, most
Sure.
people do that.
Sure.
Red-green colorblind.
I will say that the reason we did that is because a lot of them were missing that. So we can look at different ways to try to draw their attention to that, maybe some asterisks or something, but I will go ahead and look at the, so the highlight and the red together are hard. So we'll just say no on that. So then we look at 25-26. That was just our recent award period. We adjusted the date again, and that had to do with the fact that the grants were all, we had to align our dates because of when the grants were adjusted to when they were being accepted. And so we pushed out when the review date and when the award dates were done, because we still had a little bit of extra time in between when those applications were accepted, the review period, and then when the awards were given out in August. And also with the development of the budget, the adoption of the budget. Section 6, we did a reminder of the final report, because a little bit of my task is cleaning up those little housekeeping items, and that is getting those final reports, which is, as we know, grants do require, and so the city does that as well. As I had mentioned to Mayor Cumby earlier, that those reports are kept on file, and that they are available for anybody's review, any of the council members' review. So you can, those are always available if you have questions, if that wants to be part of your review processes, whatever you prefer. Again, in Section 6, we added a note, if you plan to request a reallocation of unspent funds. That was born from one of our applicants having that specific request, and it wasn't brought to our attention until the application process, acceptance process for the next year. So we kind of put that as a point for them to review prior to the presentation, so that that can be part of their presentation for their new request, but also to reallocate those funds from the previous years. Any questions regarding that one? Okay.
Council, any questions on that? I see none, thank you.
Okay. For the upcoming application process, we have incorporated some of those changes, which Councilor Newman has said no red and no highlights, so we'll work on getting that changed. But these items were specifically to kind of draw the attention to people who, applicants that missed some areas of the application that is really necessary for the council members to have that information to make their considerations. With that, then the next pages then just give you an overview of what our calendar is for the application acceptance. And so we've already determined some upcoming dates for this calendar acceptance period. So I'm not sure if you want me to go point by point, or if you've had an opportunity to review it and just have questions. I'll leave that up to you. How would you like to proceed?
Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. I think if you went through point by point, just so the general public can also follow along too.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then, before you start, Nancy, I wanted to ask Councilor Newman, would black lettering with yellow highlight, that would be
That's
okay?
fine, yeah.
It's that combo
It's the red.
that becomes, yeah.
Yeah, so if you
It's
just
the
whack
red.
it and then highlight it, that's okay. But most of the time, like, anything red and then highlighted is pretty bad.
Absolutely.
But if it's red and not highlighted, to me, I just see gray, so that doesn't bother me. But when you mix the two, it hurts people's eyes.
Could I ask a follow-up on that? So Councilor Newman, when I put together materials for you, I often run a tool in PowerPoint, and I think it's available in all Microsoft products, to check for accessibility and checks for color blindness. If we just simply run that, will that work?
Sometimes that catches it and sometimes it doesn't.
Okay,
So,
okay,
yeah.
all right.
Well, thanks for that input,
Yeah, thank you,
Counselor
that's very
Newman.
helpful.
Anytime that like it does hurt my eyes, like city-wise, I just print it in black and white so I can see it.
Okay, fair.
Which is what they could do too, but I just wanted to bring that up. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Continue.
So our schedule begins in November. We start, so coming soon, will be, but I actually kind of had a little bit of an early start. We kind of I get a little excited that way. But I go ahead, and especially based off of conversations that we have, comments that I receive from council members, mayor, vice mayor, and in applying any changes that were suggested, because they're born from, situations that arise from our, application acceptance period. So I update those forms, and then I also work with the county and their grants person to review their content as well, see if they have any other comments and whatnot. So we kind of work in tandem to ensure that our application is, agreeable between the two entities. And then I also start looking at like deadlines and our joint meetings. So we look at the joint meeting, which usually occurs towards the end of March, and then the county has their own meeting that they host themselves. And then when we go into December, we finalize all the drafts of the documents. I start working on updating the content of the city webpage to make sure that we have everything up to date, and that I'm ready to roll things out when we go into January, where we do the press release. So I have the information on the acceptance period on the webpage. We do a media press release, and then I also reach out to our past community partners with a just a notice that we are accepting our applications. And again, we just do that as a courtesy. And then just sending out reminder notices in March. That's when I do another kind of reminder that the deadline is coming up. Do that. We do notices on our social media, things like that. And currently our acceptance period, the deadline is scheduled for March 11th, 2026. So again, that was extended because it used to be in February, kind of, I think, aligned with President's Day. And so we extended that simply because we started the acceptance period later. So we kind of shifted things back, as I had mentioned earlier. Then after those applications are sent, information is sent out to the council members that the applications are in. You will each get a copy of the worksheet. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
Councilor Lockhart, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Nancy. Maybe this is a very simple answer that I might know, but under the dates here, like for city only, joint city and county, it's March 24th, 2025, but it's another year for county only. Can you tell us why?
Because currently I don't know their deadline yet. I haven't made contact with them, so I have last year's in there because I can't speculate when. Yeah, I know we've already determined ours, but I'm waiting to hear back from them. Yeah. So then, again, we go then to March, April, which is when the council receives the information on what the city manager has suggested for what the total will be for the distribution. And then it gives you the rundown of the deadline of when I will need your suggested award amounts. And again, each of you receives that worksheet. Each of you returns them back to me. This states the deadline, and then the amounts are averaged out between the 9 committee members, the council members, and then a award is determined, and each of those has a formula in them to help bring it down to the zero, so there's no over or underspending from each of you. Are there any comments on that process?
Vice Mayor? Councilor Newman?
I just have a comment on when we meet with the county commissioners, and that process was super long, and wondering if could we have discussion on splitting that into 2 days? Because some of the discussion that we were having with the applicants got cut off because their 5 minutes were up and we were starting to see that we were behind. So could there be some discussion to see if we can organize it better? And I know it's an extra meeting, but so we can have more discussion with some of these applicants.
Sure. So Councilor Newman, that is at the discretion of council, and it's also a conversation that, you might want to have with the county commissioners, because that would involve them unless they wanted to start doing their own presentation meetings. So we can certainly break that into 2 sessions, but again, that is at your discretion.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. And first, thanks for all the work you've put into this over the years. I know you kind of roll with us a lot and work to adapt with all the ideas that we have. One thing that and this is actually kind of more of and so maybe I'll hold on to it, actually. I'll wait until we're done. Sorry. I think it's more of a council-wide question rather than a Nancy question.
All righty. Anyone else? Nancy, continue.
Okay. So as I said, you all received that worksheet. You each give your recommended amounts, and then we come down to the end, and then essentially it comes down to, the budget process and making sure the funds are done, and then we make the awards. I notify the applicants of their award, and then they are each sent out their agreement form, and that outlines all of, the funds they're going to receive, what's required of them, and that includes the final report, which is due, so 2024, theirs was due in July of 2025, because the end of the fiscal year is June of 25, so we give them time to spend those funds and then give us their final report. And as I mentioned to you, I keep those filed away, and council members are welcome to see those at their, as they desire. And then so after each applicant turns in their agreement, and they're all signed, fully executed, then the first awards are sent out during that pay release in August. And then any that come in afterwards, the payments are not released until the agreements are received and fully executed. And then again, like I said, the final reports are due in July, the awards are made, and then we start again in November. So,
Thank you. Councilors, any questions or comments?
Okay, I do have one now that is,
Okay.
again, more for the council.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. So I would just love to get people's feedback in the chart where we put the dollars down. I know the first year I did it, I was like, what am I kind of basing this on? Last year, because we had the question in place that was like, how does your work align with city council goals? That's what I based my dollars off of. But I wonder if it would be helpful to have something a little bit more formalized, so to help us all be evaluating them based on the same criteria, whether that's city council goals, whether that's something else. I don't think it has to be big or in-depth. I think it can be pretty simple, but I don't know if that would be helpful to others, or if you guys are great with how it is. I don't have strong feelings about it, but I know the first year I was a little bit like, when we did it.
And just before I go to Councilor Freed, I think that the timeline being more delayed will be helpful in the future, because that earlier timeline really hits council a little early in their tenure as well. So, Councilor Freed.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Vice Mayor. That's what I recall feeling after those presentations, and to Councilor Newman's point, some of those presentations were cut short because it was such a long night, and I feel that there's some members that didn't have maybe the amount of time to speak, and one of the first meetings of the Park, Trees, and Rec Board this year is, it does a similar thing where we allocate funds to different sports and youth activities, and so I know Director Bork, and maybe Director Bork, was the one who created a rubric, or someone on the city staff did, that was really objective, and I think was passed along to all the members of the Park, Tree, and Rec Board. And so then there were some really universal ways that we're all assessing presentations and the needs and the asks of the community, and I thought that was very helpful back in either January or February when we first met for the Parks, Trees, and Rec Board, to be able to make a decision based on criteria, being a new council member, being a new person on a board or commission. So I think that's a fantastic idea, and I would agree.
Thank you. Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just to kind of piggyback off of Councilor Freed, I think making this process as objective as possible would be helpful. So some kind of matrix or rubric, I think, would be nice. We live in such a small town, and so I never want this to feel like kind of like a popularity contest or something. We all know people in these organizations. We all know, and so that makes it harder. And so I think the more that we can remove some of that personal stuff would be helpful, and if we had a guideline that all of us went off of, I think could be beneficial.
Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. The final report deadline, as far as them spending their funds and how they do it, or the final report, I like that, because I like that they're held accountable for the funds that they receive, and so they have to show that it was spent towards what they said it was going to be for. So I find that, I find it refreshing, I guess. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Newman.
One question I wish that we could put maybe in that matrix is kind of, I guess, I don't know how to, like what the ROI is, like the economic development, if we're going to give X amount of dollars, like what's that bring back into our city, and then just echo like the fairness of some sort of matrix, because you got people that come up to you, like Councilor Vigil said, we all know people, and they're like, why'd you only give me this amount of money, right? And then now you have to justify it. Well, and like sometimes that's kind of hard to justify, because all these community partners do need, they do great work here. So I do like the matrix, and I wish we could have some sort of kind of ROI question in it.
Councilor Shumway.
Thank you, Mayor. I recall the last time we did this, there was one request for over $100,000. I think what we should do is point out that there's 30 to 35 whatever applicants, and that the request cannot exceed a certain amount. I think there's probably every one of the 35 that could say, we need the full $330,000, and they could just spend it very easily. But I think what we need to do is limit the amount that any one group can request. And another thing that happens, and I've seen this many, many times, if they want $10,000, they ask for 20, and then they get 10. So I think we need to, of course, that's something that we need to be aware of, but I would like to limit the amount that any one group can request.
Thank you. Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks again, Nancy, for this presentation. And it's a really cool thing that our community does. One question going back towards the beginning. I know we have nonprofits. I work for a nonprofit, but I know there's a section here for not-for-profit agencies. Do we have many not-for-profit agencies that utilize this funding? And if so, if off the top of your head you knew, or kind of where that language came from?
Councilor Freed, I do not have that information off the top of my head, but I could go back and revisit the applications, and I can provide you that data.
Yeah, thank you.
Vice Mayor?
And it might be a difference between, so there's a 501c3 nonprofit, that's your traditional nonprofit, and then a 501c7, which is like a Rotary or I think a Rotary's in that. So I think it's a little bit of a differentiation between those C and then the number afterward. And I think the C7 is the one that is the whatever group. So.
Further questions or comments? I would just like to say that Bailey Quick, who is the grants person for the county, contacted me and the vice mayor, and along with Councilor Bowling, we met with her last week just to go over some of the concerns that the commissioners had, and to talk a little bit about the process. And I think that you have brought up probably the primary thing that came out of that informal meeting, and that was the need maybe for a matrix that guided us through that process, that helped to remove that feeling of subjectivity and help give guidance to newer members of council. And so we've talked about that. Now, we also, and I've spoken to Nancy about this as well, the possibility of having a cap that can be asked for, which we would need to, as you can see, this process is very far along, that our staff don't wait till the last minute. They get it done, and it's done in advance, and I really appreciate that. So I'm wondering if we can work on the matrix. We'll have to do that rather quickly, circulate that to council, get your feedback on that, get any ideas that council has for it. If that would be something that council would like to happen, because I think that it should be generated from us, by us, because it'll be hard for an executive person to understand what is it you want to guide you. So I think that's our responsibility and something that we need to do among us. So what would be the deadline on that, Nancy?
Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, I would say as long as we had it before you received that notice of what the city manager is saying for the amount, so we're looking at probably, before March.
So maybe by the end of the year.
Yeah, I
Just
would say
get it done.
that would be the best.
Okay.
I could ask a follow-up, though, I think, to guide our answer to that question, Nancy. So this is great, because we've had this conversation many times over the years, and it's frankly kind of refreshing to hear that the council would like the process to be more objective, because in many years the council really liked the subjective process and the individual discretion that you had. So I think it's easy to go the direction that you're asking for, but I think it's important that we think about because what I think I'm hearing is that you want to have some sort of rubric by which you will measure those applications to determine if they meet your objectives. Well, then that makes me think that we're going to want to tailor the application to gather information to help you determine if they in fact meet your measurement criteria. So March would work unless what we're really asking for here is to revise the application to gather information to inform your decision-making. And in that case, I think the deadline could be a lot sooner, don't you?
That would be correct. I'd probably need it around, like I said, I do start working on it in November. So, yeah, before the end of this, before December, and probably before the holidays, so that we can tailor that application, have you guys review it, and then have it ready to hit the streets come, January 1st.
Okay, and Janine, I think your comment was very helpful, so our starting point might be to start with the application and to start with what's there rather than trying to invent, and then for us to identify what and if we think there is something that needs to be added to that evaluation of the application process. But I think it would be a good start for us to start with the application and then to build the rubric from there. And then the second thing we would need to think about is there a feeling about limiting the amount? In my conversation with Nancy earlier today, the concern was, would we then limit it in such a way that there might not even be enough applications for the funding available? So we want to be thoughtful about what kind of number we put on that. So yes, I think Councilor Newman had his hand up first, and then Vice Mayor. Councilor Newman.
I wonder, instead of, and I'm just looking over the email that Councilor Freed sent us, I wonder, instead of putting kind of a limit, because that's the first thing that popped in my head, was like, oh, well, then, maybe they don't put in for any money, or, anyways, there's a spot on this rubric that says like funding request, and we could make that worth kind of double what everything else is worth. Like if they come in and ask for, $300,000 and we only have $300,000. So I think we could put, instead of limiting it, I think we could put that in the matrix. But then that's kind of a double-edged sword too, kind of like Councilor Shumway was saying, I only need 10,000, I'm gonna ask for 30 and hope the council gives me 12. Right?
Yeah.
So I don't think this is an easy choice, but
I don't either.
If you haven't looked at the email, this is a pretty good form.
And,
Oh, no, please, go ahead.
Vice Mayor, go ahead.
I was just going to note that might be, and I think that's part of why we talked about talked about the percentage of the person's operating budget, and considering that as well. If someone has an operating budget of $500,000 or $1 million or $3 million, their request might look a little different based on the work that they're doing versus an organization whose operating budget is $75,000 a year, right? So having that percentage in, if there's a way to kind of guide them through that part, I guess I would say, I still think a rubric is a great idea. I think the simpler we can keep it to, this application is pretty simple, and I think that is really beneficial for nonprofits to have something that's simple, to have our review process be really direct as well, and I think is nice too. So I don't know if the dollar amount needs to be in that rubric necessarily, but I think there's a way that we can do both a cap and a percentage or something like that. Sorry, Nancy.
Thank you. Councilor Freed.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thanks for this discussion. I also think it'd be really important to share this rubric so people, when they're filling out their applications, understand how we're going to grade them or assess the value that they're asking for. So I think that would be helpful. And Vice Mayor, your comment made me think of a question. And so, Nancy, do we have a way to verify these nonprofits' operating budgets, if they include that, or do we ask for any sort of verification on, some of their tax forms or anything? Has that ever been anything, or maybe it's a city manager question that we've done for people applying for this funding?
Councilor Freed, no, we do not require that documentation. They fill out the data on the form. And so they provide us with what their operating expenses, what their project cost is. Do they have any other funds that they're looking to help offset that? So again, as Vice Mayor Richardson was talking about, those amounts are built into the application for that understanding. And then, how it comes down to what their request is kind of like in that formulation, I guess.
And I'll add to that. I think it's important to the council to recognize that the administration of this grant program doesn't really happen in this room and in front of you, right? And so Nancy's mentioned the agreement. Once you guys make your funding decisions, every partner agency signs a community partner funding agreement with us. And I was just looking it up, and I'll get that language for you. But I do believe that within that agreement, it does say that if we ask for their books to be revealed to us in order to validate data that they've presented, that they will present that. And I'll pull that language up. But, that's just kind of part of a typical routine process of making sure that we can hold agencies' feet to the fire if there are issues or concerns.
That is correct, and I believe that the agreement, doesn't it say that they have to have it on file for like 5 years? Yeah.
It's a long period. Pardon me, my mic was off. It is for a long period of time. And so, yes, some of those are there, but they're part of the administration of the program, not so much what the council would see.
Thank you so much.
Councilor Newman.
I'm just curious if we've ever had to pull their data. No? Okay.
All right. So then, thank you very much for the presentation. I'm going to go to public comment. And it seems that yes, sir, I see your hand up, and you will be first. So the next step is that we take a look at the form, the application form, and that we go ahead and put together a simple, not complex matrix, agree upon that, and then submit that.
Okay, so Mayor Cumbie, so my understanding is following this meeting, I will send you the application that I've drafted up for this coming year for you guys to review, and then you will draft up the matrix, the rubric that you would like to have, and then once that's drafted up and completed and approved by you guys, then I'll include that as well with your worksheets and the letter that we give to you from city manager.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councilor Shumway.
Mayor, before we go to the public, this is called community partner funding, and I would want to make sure that we make it clear that anyone can apply, but if we're going to be receiving applications from out of the community or statewide or federal or anything like that, that they have an entity where the funds will be used entirely within our community. Now, I know that there's some that the funds that they have go, if they have a budget of so much of it goes to the national programs and things like that. But I want the money that we give to them to be used within the community itself.
Okay. Thank you.
I had one more question.
Yes.
That is on the application. And then
thought it
also,
was.
when I receive the applications, and if they have like a Cheyenne address or anything, I request their local address. I make sure that it is a local organization and that's where it's going towards.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Sorry, thank you. Just one more question for process-wise. When we say that we are going to make this, City Clerk, are we allowed to work on what this rubric would look like via email amongst all of us, or do we need to have a smaller group subcommittee working on it that then is discussed and shared?
But since we haven't quite done this way before, we could finalize it in a resolution, just to say this is the rubric we're going to use for this process. A city attorney is online, so Bob, please feel free to weigh in on this. Subcommittees are...
I'm getting there, Nancy.
Okay, Thanks, Bob.
No, you can't work on this together via email.
Can or can't?
That's, yeah, that would be a meeting if the council meets via email.
So you could absolutely form a subcommittee to work on it. Bring your thoughts together and formalize it in a resolution.
All right. So, can we do that later? Okay. I'll go to public comment right now. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I just wanted to wrap up this work session, if that's what you're wanting to do, with just some final information, if I could.
Yes.
So I wanted to let the council know, we're working on kind of a pretty cool little project with an intern in the city manager's office this summer, and it will provide some additional data to you about the program as a whole going into next funding cycle. And I think it gets a little bit back to Councilor Newman's thoughts around return on investment. And so we have a great intern in our office. Actually, you met Sam. He did some work as well, finishing up the landlord recognition program. But with his economics degree, we've been working with the School of Business up at the university. We've acquired the RIMS 2 economic modeling software, and we are going to be able to give you some data about how the $230-ish thousand that you allocated last year and then in subsequent future years, what the return on that investment is in terms of the ripple effect through the local economy. So that's pretty cool, and our community partners, I want to give a nod to them. They've been working with us to provide some data back to us to help us complete that economic analysis. So that'll be fun, and we hope that'll really show the value of the program in the community more broadly than the just direct investment that you make each year.
Thank you.
And that's all we have. Now we're done.
Okay, thank you very much. I should have asked. Public comment, and Mr. Glass, if you can come to the podium, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Cumby and members of council. Pursuant to some of the remarks that were made a little bit earlier this evening, and also because I am the founder of a few nonprofits and have sat on the boards of several, I'd like to make a recommendation of an item to add to your checklist, which I think will help you make good decisions. And that is, I think you should request each nonprofit's unredacted Form 990. Now, for those of you who haven't been involved with nonprofits, what the Form 990 is it is the tax form which every nonprofit, every 501c3 or 501c whatever organization must submit to the IRS under penalty of perjury. It will show you how much money the organization has saved up, how they spent their money, where they're getting their money from. In short, it will give you a very good financial picture of who you might be giving money to and how much they need it. So I would just strongly recommend it just as a simple way of doing this. And by the way, you will have to ask for it, not rely on a third party like GuideStar, because not all organizations submit to those third parties. But I recommend that if you use that resource, you'll be able to find a lot more about these organizations. You'll be able to make much better decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Glass.
Thank you.
I do appreciate that. Any other public comment? Then, seeing none, back to council for final comments. And I would say we will put this together in the form of a resolution to appoint a subcommittee to work on the matrix or the rubric in cooperation with the rest of council, and we'll bring that resolution forward for that, and then we do it officially and appoint a subcommittee. Okay? Any final comments before we go on to the next work session? Yes, Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say thanks to Nancy Hogan-Potter for all the work you do on this. It was an awesome thing to come into council and be able to work on this, but it's awesome to see all the work that goes into it, so thank you very much.
And thank you so much, Nancy, for working with us tonight and kind of ironing out just these few things. Yes, Councilor Newman.
I kind of like the idea of maybe looking at that Form 990 if it's possible to kind of give I think that is a good idea to give us a background of their budget and what they spend that on. So I don't know if that's feasible or not for the program, but kind of something maybe to look at.
Yeah, and it is something that is required by them. So I think that in the discussion with Bailey Quick, was that mentioned? Doing that anyway. So we'll kind of work on that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our second work session, and that is loading and unloading zones in the downtown district, I think, or Mr. Japp, thank you.
We're working, okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Your request, staff has analyzed the downtown area to see where we could possibly install some loading zones in that downtown. So for tonight, we're going to walk through the locations that staff has identified. We'll then pause and have discussion, any questions you have, and then finally outline the next steps and what those could look like if there's any interest in council moving forward with this. Also, feel free to ask any questions throughout the presentation tonight. As my goal is just to get your input tonight and kind of see how you feel about it. We have identified 4 intersections, 2nd and University, 2nd and Ivinson, 2nd and Grand, and 2nd and Garfield. And before I show you the maps, there's just a few key points that apply to all these locations that we're suggesting. All 4 locations will basically work in the same way, so I won't repeat every detail on every slide as we kind of go through them. But you can see why we're recommending placing them here. To begin with, each zone would be a 30-minute general loading zone. So that would apply to delivery trucks, service trucks, or even customers in the downtown area that need to load, unload, or anything with that. The locations were chosen so that we're consistent across the downtown area. That would help drivers to know and delivery people where to kind of go, what to expect with that. With these locations, working with our street division, pretty minor changes to make them. Some very minor changes to signs, minor changes to striping, so it wouldn't take a lot to implement these, nor a lot of cost. The locations would make loading or unloading easier since we're next to curb ramps. Also, this could improve safety since vehicles won't be hanging out into the travel lane. With that diagonal parking that we have there, if you pick one of those spots when you're unloading, you're basically standing out in that travel lane, especially if you're doing something large. So I was looking for parallel spots. One limitation that we do have these is they're not designed for a large vehicle. As we kind of go through, you'll see they're about 20 feet in length. So, full-size pickup would even be pretty tight in there, but should fit into that location. We're not going to see semis or large delivery vehicles going in there. And then finally, enforcement will be a challenge with this in the downtown as we kind of work through it and everything else with that, but especially with 30 minutes. So kind of walk through the slides. So the first one is at 2nd and University. With this, it's basically on the south side, east and west of that intersection. All these are about 20 feet from the edge of the radius, and then we'll have a 20-foot loading zone that is in that location.
Point of information. Councilor O'Doherty.
I just want to point out to the public that these maps are oriented with the north to the right because it's not obvious on the screen. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for doing that because I was oriented the other way.
Yes. The next one is 2nd and Ivinson. For this one,
I have one more
yes.
question. Councilor Shumway.
I want to make sure that the loading and unloading vehicle is similar to what we have at airports where they must be occupied at all times. So someone can't just park and run down to the local store and then run back and say I was only there 20 minutes.
Your Honorable Mayor, through you, probably the intent of this would not be to have to remain occupied. We definitely could look into that if that's how council did want them to be set up, but it probably would be at these locations set up that someone wouldn't have to be remaining in the vehicle at all times, but could run into the place of business, grab what they need, or load them, everything on that.
Follow-up?
What I would suggest is we make exceptions for delivery vehicles where it's obvious it's a delivery vehicle, but for passenger vehicles, I think it could very easily be abused.
Thank you for the comment.
Thank you. Continue, please. Vice Mayor.
Sorry, one kind of counter to that would be those folks who live downtown, and if they have a lot of groceries and are going up and down to get those groceries dropped off. So that would be maybe one consideration. Or, Christmas time, if you're trying to load something big. Benton Rusty, I know, has furniture. I mean, there might be just some other times where it might just be a one-person show. So
Yeah.
I like the thought on that, Joe, to consider, but I'm also wondering about some of those other situations that might arise.
Another consideration where I've been contacted by people is that they're driving a person with mobility issues. They leave the car to help get them situated. They're going to a restaurant or shopping. They get them out of the car and then go to park. And it would not allow, and I've had a number of requests about either taking an elder down and wanting to get them situated, then park the car, come back, pick them up, or get somebody mobility impaired. So it starts to create some difficulties for one of the reasons why we're here doing this. So enforcement, as you said in the beginning, it could be an issue, and we are working on streamlining our enforcement issues. So go ahead and continue, Eric.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Your Honorable Mayor, yeah. Enforcement would be a challenge with that, of trying to figure it out with the discussion that is kind of going on and everything. So definitely, I'm hearing it, and we can look into signage, but it will be difficult to kind of find a sign that could accommodate everything and anything for that. So, but we can definitely look into those type of situations.
Sign that you have to
Yes.
roll out.
A variable message board, we could kind of adjust it as needed, but yeah. All right. Let's see. Next location would be 2nd and Ivinson. For this, we can get 3 legs of the intersection with that driveway entrance. We're not able to get that northeast leg. Again, these would be about 20 feet from the radius and a 20-foot parking space. The next one we would look at would be 2nd and Grand. Same as the others. I do want to note, though, that the northeast corner is currently a handicap space, so would have to look into that and possibly see if that could be removed and what the need for that is. That's probably not a fully approved handicap space at this time, just kind of seeing how it is laid out. I haven't fully analyzed it, but we could look at that location as well. And then the final one would be 2nd and Garfield. Again, we can get all 4 legs of this and 20 feet from the radius with a 20 feet parking space. So with that, I can answer any kind of questions you may have about these specific areas or anything else in general.
Thank you. Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Japp. I would not be for getting rid of a handicap. I mean, there's not enough of those spaces sometimes anyway. But, talking about enforcement, could they be required to leave their hazard lights on while they're loading and unloading? So, because I can doubt if someone's going to abuse it, they're going to run into a store for an hour or shop and leave their hazard lights on for an hour. Just an idea if that was on the sign or whatnot. Just trying to simplify it, but yet not. It's going to get abused. Mm-hmm. We know that. It's already abused with 2-hour parking, but it's a need downtown for sure. Mm-hmm. Just throwing some things against the wall, see if they stick.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Newman?
When I met with city manager about this, I thought it was only going to be about a 15-minute conversation, and I was probably in her office for like an hour and a half because of some of these concerns that council has already brought up. I also am not for getting rid of the ADA spot. And I like the locations that you picked. I think they're some of the ones that we talked about, and we were brainstorming all kinds of different ideas in that meeting. One thing I would that I wrote down after the meeting with city manager, I think we need to have a time block for this, because like, let's say like after 8 o'clock, the bars and restaurants down there could use that parking instead. And I don't see a lot of people maybe unloading past 8 or 9 o'clock. So if we can look at something to the effect of like 6 a.m. to whatever, whatever those numbers are, instead of making it, 100% full-time, was kind of my concern, because we hear all the time there's not enough parking. And then I was like, oh, well, we're going to get photos of these not being used at night. So if we could do something to that effect, that would be great. But thank you for working on this. You took an idea that was all over the place and made it great.
Hello, Mayor. May I ask a follow-up question on
Yes.
that? With the time block, definitely understand that's definitely something that's feasible. One thing that has kind of come up with this is there's a lot of delivery food drivers that could possibly use these locations to park, grab food, drop off, pick up, and everything. As a general, these could qualify. However, that probably would not be maybe during the peak hours at that. I kind of wanted to, with the time block, wanted to get kind of council's little input on that, if they had any thoughts, knowing with that time block.
Councilor Newman.
6 a.m. to 9 p.m. I mean, because
The restaurant's closed.
right, the restaurants are closed. My boy does DoorDash, so that's kind of like how I justified that just real quickly. It's like he doesn't get many things downtown past 9 o'clock. So
Okay, thank you.
I have Councilor Freed, and then Vice Mayor. And then
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Japp. I think it's a great idea. I'm in favor of the time limit. I think not removing an ADA parking space would be really helpful. And then I do think that this should go before Traffic Safety Commission, and it might be there. I know we meet on Thursday, so maybe that's a great time to get the input of the fully staffed Traffic Safety Commission. And my main concern with that would just be if there's anything that we haven't thought about, just to get that input. And also, does this impact any sight lines for crossing, some of those public crossing areas? And if so, could we probably can't shorten some of these spots, but is there a way we can delineate those sight lines so the safety stays intact?
Your Honorable Mayor, through you, with most of the sight lines, because we are getting that 20 feet from the edge of the radius, we're following the new city ordinance that we posted with the 20 feet, especially with these being signal, that's also meeting state statute of just needing that distance there. So for the most part, we should be good. As we go into it in depth, some of them we may have to adjust slightly or something, but as a quick analysis, most of these seem to kind of meet most of those requirements.
You're on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor O'Doherty. City Manager, did you need to interject?
Sure. It is partly directed to Councilor Free's question, Mayor, so I'd be happy to jump in. I wanted to mention at the end of this, but this is timely, I am frankly unclear on the municipal code authority for determining loading and unloading zones. As I have read it, and I have not referred this to the city attorney yet, and maybe the city engineers read it, but there are various sections that indicate that the Traffic Commission appoints these zones, and there are other sections which seem to contradict that and indicate it is the city manager or designee whom you are looking at. So what I would have recommended to you at the end of this work session, Council, is that we do take this to Traffic Safety Commission, get their feedback on it, and then ultimately, once the city attorney determines who's the authority that makes this decision, we'll make it. But even if it's me, I would like Traffic Safety Commission to weigh in.
Thank you. Councilor O'Doherty.
One of the gentlemen that brought this forward, who has residents building downtown, talked about being able to bring groceries in and things like that. You come home from a long trip, you got a bunch of luggage, you want to be able to carry it up, and I think limiting the time to 6 to 9 doesn't help you then. I don't know, that would be, we'll get some feedback on that, I'm sure, but I think it makes it a very confusing spot, whereas if you just say it's a 30-minute zone, that makes it a lot easier, and it's good for people to pick up and drop off. Like if they're getting sporting equipment, we have rental places downtown, and they need to drag stuff around. So, thanks.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
That makes me wonder, I have not been downtown past 9 for a really long time, but I don't know how busy it is after 9 anyway, if we would need to have that open, or if there are plenty of spots. And so maybe that's something we could look into, that if the PD goes down and can do like a kind of a review and say it's packed, then maybe we consider the block. And if they are like, no, there's plenty of parking, then we just don't really fret with it. The other question I had for you, just purely out of curiosity, is there a reason you would do like a 15-minute loading and loading instead of a 30 to increase that, or is that just generally what it is?
Yellow Mayor, through you, 15, 30 minutes, 60, 90 minutes are actually fairly common. Kind of just looking around and that was just my, best recommendation of doing the 30-minute of, that would allow somebody to get in, do loading, whatever they had. If there happened to be some delay, didn't want it to have to be too short. And looking around at other communities, 30 minutes seemed to be very common.
Further questions or comments? Thank you very much, Mr. Jebb.
I had just one more thing, just as we're kind of going through this. This has already kind of been talked about, but obviously sounds like we have support from the council on this. So our next steps on this would be reach out to the public, reach out to the downtown, as was noted, bring it to Traffic Safety Commission to get another public venue. It probably won't be the next one, but in coming ones, to make sure that we can get adequate public notice so people know that is coming forward. With that, and then with it, we would probably start a trial program, see how it is working and everything, try to get more public input and see if any changes need to be made with that. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Shumway.
I may have missed this. How many parking spots do we lose if we have loading zones?
9.
Didn't fully count. Let's see, 4, 8, yeah. 13.
13.
Yeah, 12 if we take out the ADA.
Yeah, we should retain the ADA, I think.
Yeah.
So 12. All right. Thank you, sir. And next, I'm going to an eager public comment on this agenda item. Mr. Glass. Welcome.
Good evening again, Honorable Mayor Cumbie and members of council. You seem to have a lot of items in which I have various interests tonight, and this is one of them. As the part owner of a downtown building with lots of residents who have the exact problem that Councilor Richardson was talking about, needing to unload groceries and then go to park, and I think it would be wonderful to have these loading zones. However, I'm concerned that this hasn't come before the Traffic Safety Commission, so please do send it that way. And also consider putting them in a different place. Putting these at intersections means that a large vehicle could block the ramp at the corner, number one. Number two, a lot of deliveries are made to and from alleys. If we have these in the middle of the block near the entrances to alleys, they would serve not only the block face, but also the businesses that get deliveries or even have door dashers or other people come in through the back. And the other advantage of putting these spaces in the middle of the block is that you would need fewer of them. Losing parking is always a concern. And you'd lose fewer of them if you had them in the middle of the block, and they could serve more areas because of that. It would also eliminate problems with bulb outs. You can't put one of these at a corner with a bulb out. But all the blocks that do have bulb outs at one end or the other have a place in the middle of the block where we could put them near an alley. So that would be my initial recommendation, but I think this is worthy of more discussion. So please, let's keep talking about this, and hopefully we could do something useful here.
Thank you, Mr. Glass.
Thank you.
Is there any further public comment on this agenda item? Yes. Ms. McCracken.
Peggy McCracken. I don't have any real vested interest, but I would just say your comment about doing a count of what's going on at downtown after 9 o'clock, be judicious on what day you pick. If it's a football Saturday, you know everybody's going to be down at the bar after 9 o'clock, right? No football game, be a different story.
Thank you, Peggy. Any further public comment on this agenda item? Thank you. Back to council for any final comments. Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say thanks to City Engineer Jap for the dedication of getting this work done and providing this to the Traffic Safety Commission and the city manager's perspective with that. And just always grateful for the amount of forethought and insight you guys take into all these presentations and listening to us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jap. As Councilor Newman said, you took something that was a loose idea and brought it into something that we can work with, and we appreciate that. Thank you. All right, we will now go on to our third work session, considering revisions to the Storm Surface Water Utility Ordinance. Good evening, Director Webb.
Mayor, Council, good evening. So there's a lot of information on your summary sheet there. I'm not going to go read the whole thing to you. I'm just going to do a quick little excerpt here. For over a decade, the city has worked to address long-standing drainage system deficiencies caused by inadequate funding and aging infrastructure, which have led to flooding, safety risks, and environmental degradation. Following years of studies, plans, and over $2 million in investment, the city established a surface water management utility in 2024 to sustainably manage stormwater through an enterprise fund model aligned with national best practices. The utility aims to improve drainage performance, protect water quality in local rivers and streams, and reduce the strain on the wastewater treatment plant. Upon adoption of the ordinance in December 2024, the process of implementing the business plan began with staff calculating service fees, recruiting and onboarding qualified staff for the new surface water program, and preparing bid documents for the first group of sizable infrastructure projects that would begin addressing the 10-year capital construction backlog of $60.5 million. After the initial implementation in July, including new fees based on impervious surface area, significant public concern arose regarding fee fairness and structure, prompting the City Council to suspend the program temporarily via Resolution 2025-65 for a 120-day review. Areas of public concern include allowing credits for residents, the definition of impervious area, and the fee structure, including the outliers. The city manager included the billing distribution graphs on your summary sheets for your information. Aaron Murray with WSP is here tonight with us, and he has a few slides to go over with you regarding level of service, to remind us of that level of service, which really kind of kicks us into where we need to be fee-wise, revenue-wise. Elizabeth Treadway, I believe, from WSP is also on Zoom. After Aaron completes his presentation, we'll turn it over to the mayor, and really is what we're wanting is you all to have a conversation. Let us know what your concerns are. Let us know things you want to see so that we as staff and our consultant can work on those solutions and bring you back recommendations in the future. With that, I'll turn it over to Aaron.
Welcome, Aaron. Good to have you here.
Thanks, Rex. Yes. Mayor and Council, good evening. All right, I'm going to fast forward here to the end and then circle back. Councilor Newman, I apologize, more green and red. It was just, as soon as you said that, I thought, oh wow, we were throwing a lot more green and red at you. That's the one you didn't want to see, okay. And we're going to show it twice. So this was the level of service matrix. You've seen this before, that was adopted in 2024, showing the level that is started at for each of these activities in a stormwater program: asset management, engineering planning, O&M, capital improvements, and administration and customer service. We thought it'd be useful to circle back to how we got to this point, especially for council that was not here at the time. Back in 2022, we started developing this by looking at what would be kind of the range of costs if, say, instead of this mix of choices of level of service, everything was selected at the basic level. What would be the cost of service if everything was at the medium level, and what would be the cost if everything was at the high level? So setting the stage there. Oh, there we go. We started with those three options, and in this basic level of service, and this is in 2022, we started by looking at maintenance capacity under this level of service, which I should add is an increase over the current level of service at the time. So we're adding 2 public works workers. The idea here is they'd be able to increase the amount of street sweeping, increase the amount of closed circuit camera inspection of the pipes, probably not both with just 2 people, but they could choose where to apply those. New vacuum truck equipment, and getting a CCTV truck from utilities. The idea under basic is targeting system cleaning and repair, keeping the existing system as functional as you can, and less on doing large projects. The capital improvement investment under the basic option is shooting for, let's address those high priority projects over about a 20-year period. And if the engineering capacity isn't adequate, possibly using engineering contracts to oversee some of that. If we look at the medium option across the board, this is increasing the maintenance capacity by adding 4 public works workers, so you'd be able to enhance both the street sweeping and the CCTV, have a crew focused on both. The idea is you'd inspect that entire system in a rotating 5-year period, so 1/5 of it each year, and then start it again after 5 years. Increase the engineering capacity, hire an engineering technician to be able to oversee the increased capital program, and that capital program would shoot for increasing in investment to tackle those high priority projects over a 10-year period approximately. Existing staff would be dedicated to support the financial management, so not a new hire in that area. Under that high level of service, if high was selected across the board, this would be 6 additional staff hired. So increasing inspection, increasing cleaning, increasing street sweeping, with the idea that you'd inspect the entire system in probably a 3-year rotating period instead of the 5-year under the medium. Engineering capacity would be increased even more because now the capital improvement program is more robust. That capital improvement program would aim to knock off the high priority projects in a 5-year period. So those were kind of the range of options presented to council. And we generated costs for those services. So this breaks down the cost. Each of these slides is compared to the FY22 general fund costs. So we extracted what currently at that time was spent on stormwater. So if staff spent a part of their time on stormwater, we counted part of that. So that's why you see a 2.54 full-time equivalent. It's a part of several people's time. Tallied up the expenses that are direct expenses to stormwater, and then the capital improvement program for that year was 1.6 million. So generally it was about a project per year. When we compare that to the basic level of service, we're adding those 2 staff. There's additional expenses, direct expenses, and now we're funding a little more on the capital improvement program, about 2 million a year. And we should note that under both of these, the current slip lining process where the city tries to extend the life of the storm sewer system by slip lining, that is continued under both of these options, and really under all of the options to continue to do that process. Comparing that 2022 expenses to the medium projection, Now we're adding approximately seven new staff members, additional expenses that go with the additional equipment that they use. And now we're funding that capital improvement program at about $5 million a year to tackle the high priority projects in approximately 10 years. And then finally, comparing it to that high level of service, initially it's adding about 7, and that ramps up by year 3 to adding a total of 9 full-time equivalents. More expenses on that end because you have additional people, additional equipment, and now funding the capital improvement program at $11 million a year, which is attacking the capital improvement backlog for the high priority projects in about 5 years. So and then, here's a comparison kind of summarizing the projected costs. Again, the second column is just that FY22 extracted cost, and then the level of service for each of those projections if that basic was selected all across the board, if medium was selected across the board, and if high was selected across the board. And the idea was to give council kind of that range of what type of level of service do you want, and here's the range of costs that go with that. And then back to the yellow or the blue and red. This was what was selected through talks with staff, with focus group, and with council at the time, starting at basic in some aspects, ramping up to medium, starting at medium off the board right away at the O&M and the system inspection, and then aspiring to get to high after 10 years in a couple areas. So we thought this would be helpful in your deliberations, just to kind of see where things came from and what kind of the range of programs are available to handle the stormwater service. So with
Councilors, do you have any questions at this point? Any questions? Okay. Thank you.
And Mayor, at this point, we just want to turn it over to you for council discussion and comments. We'll be taking notes about your concerns, what you've heard from your constituents, your thoughts, your ideas, and we will take those back and be back here in the future with some potential recommendations and solutions.
Okay, thank you very much, Director Webb. So we will open it up, starting with Councilor O'Doherty.
So when we compared to fiscal year 2022, we're spending 1.8, almost 1.9 million right now on storm drainage. So that money right now, so we're doing work on this, but we're robbing robbing the general fund of this money. So the idea was to put this in its own fund to try to be able to plan and do a better job with this. But what I'm seeing is even with the basic level, 2.5 million, I still have no idea. We've talked a lot about residential. When we talk about commercial, I don't have an idea of that highest bucket. What's the revenue in that bucket? Because I think if we capped it at 170 for commercial, we still would have, I calculated about less than 2 million a year. That's less than we pay one excavation company in a year right now for doing things for us. So $2 million doesn't cover very much. So if I could, one thing I really need to evaluate is to know what's the revenue in each of those buckets. Like I can calculate it for the ones lower down, and for residential, I can calculate that pretty well. But for the non-residential, we have this giant, tail. It looks like bimodal distribution, but it's really not. It's just because that last bucket is so big. So I don't have a way to evaluate what would be lost if we capped the non-residential at 170 or something like that, because I have no idea how much revenue is in there. And from my crude calculations, I think we're only getting to about what we're already spending now if we capped it at 170. So can somebody address that?
Thank you, Council. I asked the clerk to pull up these charts. Maybe we can make them a touch bigger. Of course, you can increase your screens on your laptops, but I guess the first thing I would say, Council, is I understand the inclination, specifically to you, Councilor Doherty, to want to know the numbers tonight, right? And certainly we can crunch those numbers for you. But going back to what Aaron has said, I think, the way that we make policy around rates in the public sector, or even in a business for that matter, so we understand what's the level of service that we want to provide, or, the type of widget we want to build, or whatever that may be. Right now, the program that you have adopted and you've sort of paused takes us really to that medium level of service. And so, frankly, I want to give a nod to the counselors who were involved in this in 22, 3, and 4, who already made decisions to try to minimize the impact of this rate on the community. Because, of course, the high level of service would have meant a higher rate that would be charged. And so the council took great pains to mitigate the rate impact. Directly to your question, Councilor Doherty, looking at this chart here, you can see for our non-residential parcels or our business customers, who we know we've heard a lot from these individuals, particularly the ones that are the outliers, right? So the tail of this curve, basically everything on this chart from the red vertical line that says $50 moving to the right-hand side. What you can see there is that we have 165 landowners, and remember, there's a total of 10,002 landowners who are being billed. So of 10,002 landowners, 165 land parcels will pay more than $170, Councilor O'Doherty. If the council want to choose $170 as sort of that price point that you perceive as beyond that becomes unaffordable for our business community, that's absolutely fine. And we can go and get you those numbers, and we can come back to tell you what the level of service impact will be of that rate. Or if we just need to slow down the ramp up from basic to medium, maybe it takes us 5.5 years to get to a medium level of service, if that is your goal. So to your question, Aaron, I know you're like me, you're the data lady, and you want the hard numbers. We're not ready to sort of calculate those on the fly, and because I feel that is a little bit of a slippery slope for us. To misspeak publicly in any way would certainly be detrimental, I think, to the city as a whole, council and staff, if we accidentally gave you wrong numbers on the fly.
Yeah,
Follow up.
It's just that's a really important bucket, and in order to see, can we even do the basic level with doing caps on the charges to try to make it more palatable to the public. I don't even see how we could even get to the basic level. So anyway, I find it very depressing because our biggest landowners are the ones that are upset with us, and they are also, some don't pay taxes. So how do we provide stormwater service when we don't have revenue? Like we're the only entity that can't, when our prices go up, we can't raise prices on stormwater or streets. We have to just keep getting by with the same revenue. So that's the issue for me. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Just a couple of questions. I appreciate you bringing up that timeline, because it looks like we're looking at both level of service and amount of time it would take to get to that level of service. And so perhaps with the bucket that Councilor O'Doherty is talking about, what would it look like 15 years out? Would also be another question that I would have, so that we could see how much could we taper down if it took us 15 years, or how much, I think getting out much further than 15 years gets for me, a little worrisome because that's just more time for our issue to get worse. The other thing I wonder about, and this is still working through my head, so I don't know if this is going to make sense at all, but is there a way to, so we're looking at that bucket that has 170 and above, and I know we're talking about the surfaces, the impervious surfaces, and how we get there. But I'm wondering, so when we're thinking about our largest user of our, who's taking up the space that doesn't pay taxes, could we look at them unit by unit somehow? So that entity isn't paying $170 flat fee, but each of their structures, their houses, parcels, thank you, parcels pay a $170 fee or something, you know what I mean? I have not fleshed this idea out fully, but I'm just wondering if there's a way to somehow
Mayor,
think about it differently.
Mayor, through you, the program right now is by parcel. And so, like the city, we have lots of parcels. And so that fee is assessed on each of those parcels, not as the city is the entity. Yeah.
Other comments or from councils? Yes, Councilor Freed.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thanks to city staff and Director Webb for taking notes and looking at this. I think some of these caps are what I've heard a lot from the public in the past few months, and I've heard a lot of support for the program in the most recent months, with maybe just taking some considerations that we're kind of talking about now to keep businesses afloat or in our communities, not driving them out. It is refreshing to hear the presentation that, there's 160 out of 10,000 parcels that are above a certain level, but I really would like to see that data too, that Council Member O'Doherty asked for, to see if it's even realistic to, if we set a cap for commercial properties or even residential at $50 for a residential property and $170 for a commercial property, could that even do any of this for us down the line? And if not, then again, that's a further in the conversation, and maybe just to the council here, if one of the largest players in our community isn't going to pay for this or be a part of this, does that change the structure that we need to then think about, which is what we're here to do? And my mind jumps to what our city manager said, which is, maybe we extend this out for 5 years or extend it longer, and we just assess the needs at that time. But I do think it's refreshing to hear that there's a lot of folks that have been in support of this the last few months, and also folks that aren't. But I think people have realized that there's a need for stormwater, and we just need to keep figuring it out. Thanks.
Councilor Shumway.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have been very concerned about this entire program. Let me just kind of go through a few things that concern me. First of all, for 150 years, we've charged nothing for stormwater drainage, and we have over 70 miles of stormwater drainage in place. We probably are maybe halfway there. Here's my concern. Let's suppose we have 100% of the stormwater system complete and it's functional. And what happens is, I was with other members of the council, was on the sandbag crew when we had a flood, and the a very large volume of the water that was flooding homes on the west side was coming from storm water systems and manhole covers being blown out, because our system cannot handle, it's overwhelmed very quickly by sustained heavy stormwater and by flooding. We cannot prevent flooding, and flooding causes the damage. Now, if we want to save the river from particulates, the sweeping of streets is done when the roads are dry, And this, if it's soil, there's hundreds of times more soil that gets into the river long before it ever reaches the city limits of Laramie. And if we do this sweeping to get the particulates that we don't want to go into the river, we can do that when the streets are clean. I just don't see how I do have a solution for those properties. See, we're giving the public a false impression. We say, if we get our stormwater system complete, your properties are protected. That is not true. They're still going to be flooded at the same rate as when the system was incomplete because of flooding and sustained heavy stormwater. So what they need to do is, well, I've got 4 solutions for them. One is find another place to live, which is not a good solution. Another is to buy federal flood insurance, which will pay for their loss. Another is to have a flood savings plan where when, if the flood comes every 50 years, they have enough money in there to pay for their loss. Or another is have barriers to keep the water moving into channels that go. And the worst one of the thoughts I have is to make 5 typical channels like the Spring Creek channel that run through the middle of town. Nobody wants to destroy their neighborhoods with that. That would carry away floodwater, and that would take away the sustained heavy stormwater. But we cannot build a system that will prevent damage to the businesses and the homes that happen from floods and heavy stormwater. So I don't know why we're making people think that if they pay $10, $175 every month, that's going to protect their property. It won't. It'll only protect. Now, snow melt and regular rainwater somewhat finds its way down to the river, and that's not the problem. The problem is flooding. And so I don't know how we can justify saying once the system's in place, you're all protected, because it's not true.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Shumway, I appreciate those comments. And I do wonder, though, what it seems to me sometimes is that currently it feels like we get a rainstorm that lasts maybe 20 minutes and things are flooded. And if we had a giant rain, right, like a massive something, maybe the system wouldn't support that, or maybe it would. I don't, maybe our staff can speak to that. But I think my concern is even things that just don't seem like they should be that big of a deal with the storm. We're seeing streets that are just filled. So I think improvements and repairs, I would hope, and I would love to hear from staff on this, would at least alleviate us not being able to get through 4th Street when we've had 20 minutes of rain. So I think that's where the rub is for me, that it feels like, man, other towns have this much rain and their roads aren't a mess like ours are. So I feel like there is some work that can be done to help alleviate some of this.
Yeah.
Mr. Japp.
Hello, Mayor, through you. I'll start, and then I'll have Aaron fill in maybe any gaps that I have. So, we've been talking about, as Brooke started the presentation, about the money that we spent getting ready for this. That money getting spent ready for that was to complete master plans. So if you actually go to our citywide master plan, and it's this $100+ million we're talking about, that's what that's trying to do. So we've identified and we've modeled basins, we've modeled our pipe network, everything else throughout the entire city from a high level, and identified where the systems need to be upgraded to handle that 1 in 100-year storm event. So that is what that money's doing now. To Councilor Shumway, it's not going to handle that, 1 in 1,000-year event or anything like that. But most communities do design to that 1 in 100-year event, which is going to handle those those lower impacts that you're talking about, the 20-minute floods and things like that. So the money that we're looking at for the capital improvement plan that was part of this is to address those and get the system up to date where we can to handle that 1-in-100-year event. And that also identifies areas where there is no stormwater that's installed. There's several areas of town where we don't have stormwater pipe at all installed. There's other areas there where it's undersized that we have identified. It's trying to improve the inlets to make sure that system is getting in. It's to handle the maintenance. We're talking about water quality. That money's helping to do the water quality to keep the impairment of the Laramie River is important, but it's also keeping that sediment out of the pipe. When we start having our pipes filled up half full, which is a lot of times what we see when we start doing maintenance, we've significantly decreased our capacity of our system at that point, where even just cleaning doubles that capacity when you're half filled with pipe. The system also allows us to be able to install water quality systems in our detention ponds. We've started to try to do that as we've done projects recently, but that allows us to catch that sediment ahead of time, but that all costs money to get that installed. We've put in the gutter bins in the downtown where we've started to. We can expand stuff like that. There's also manholes that we can do as well that helps collect that sediment, which is a much easier maintenance to go suck out a manhole than it is to go jet an entire several blocks of a storm sewer line that hasn't been maintained for several years. So there's kind of building. So, we're trying to handle those 1-in-100-year events is what we're trying to do, and that's kind of how the entire master plan was built off of to handle those type of events. So, Aaron, I don't know if you have anything more to add, but hopefully that kind of answers some.
Councilor O'Doherty.
Well, I was just wondering, could you address the flooding that Councilor Shumway was referring to? I tried sandbagging then too. I wasn't very successful. Those things are heavy. But that's because the river was above the point of where the water was coming out, right? So when the river is above our output, of course it's going to back up, right? Isn't that what happened?
Yeah, Your Honor, Mayor, through you, I'm assuming Councilor Shumway was mentioning to the flood that happened probably 15 years ago in the West Laramie area, and that is what happened. The river got above the stormwater coming in, and it started to infiltrate, backfill essentially up the stormwater lines. We have installed since then some backflow preventers that work there, and it has helped in that area. However, there still can be problems. Say you have the Laramie River is flooding because of snow melt, and we get a high rain event. At that point, the system starts to battle each other of what has the most pressure of where the water is going to go. So we've tried to mitigate that the best we can in that area. But, when you're having a high snow melt with the river flooded and that. But we have started monitoring that, both streets, fire, engineering, and a lot of people trying to help prevent that.
Thank you. Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. You might stand back up, Mr. Chapman, or Mr. Murray. And I'm not, this is not a suggestion on my part. I'm just asking, I want to ask this. What if we did nothing? Didn't do this? What would happen?
Your Honor, Mayor, through you, we'd still be running off of the budget that we have now with it. However, maintenance would continue to decrease. We would have limited funds to do projects. We'd be essentially where we are now, where we're not moving forward with solving the problems that exist and the flood problems that are going on.
Follow-up?
Follow-up. So with the sediment that goes into the Laramie River, which has become an issue, which was identified, in 2018? So what happens with that? I mean, if we don't do anything, and I'm not, again, I'm not suggesting, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. If we didn't do anything and that gets worse, what are the consequences?
I'm a Mayor, through you. That's a little bit variable with DEQ, but the city could be forced into MS4
which would then have a whole set of rules that we'd be required to follow. Currently, that's through population. One of the things that we're hoping to start moving forward is starting to prep for that. But we would be forced through the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality to start having different regulations, and there's a whole list of regulations that kind of goes with that, which that program costs significant money. It costs staff to maintain. The Laramie, we would still kind of have those problems going on. So we would basically be forced into it from an environmental standpoint. Yeah, so MS4, I'm trying to remember, and I might have to refer to Aaron a little bit here, but it's it's been a while since I've actually looked at it, but it's a set of rules and regulations that the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality has, and Aaron probably can speak a little bit more to the details of that.
Sure, yeah, so MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, and currently in Wyoming, only larger communities, as Eric mentioned, due to population are required. Cheyenne, Casper, or any smaller communities that are in those metro areas, Mills, FE1 Air Force Base, et cetera, but they can apply it to smaller communities either by a change in that population rule, or if you have an impaired waterway and the DEQ says, yeah, you aren't getting the job done, you have to have this permit. And so what the permit means, it has like 6 different areas. You have to have a map, you have to have public education program, you have to do some level of monitoring. There's good housekeeping practices that city facilities have to do. And then there's annual reporting to make sure you're doing all those things. Probably the biggest cost would be on that monitoring end. When you're on the impaired list, that 303D list that the Laramie River is currently on, you can attack it in 2 ways, or you can battle in 2 ways. And right now, the Laramie Rivers Conservation District is doing a watershed-based approach, and that's, Laramie is cooperating with that, and DEQ allows you to do that. And but if you don't show improvement, they can push you into a total maximum daily limit requirement where you're actually monitoring the end of your stormwater pipes, and you have a limit on how many pounds of sediment you can discharge to the river. And as you can imagine, that gets expensive when you're trying to monitor things that don't always discharge and catch them when they are discharging. Yep.
Thank you. One more. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. The other thing that I remember looking at in the previous presentation was the tiers that were presented, and curious if there would be a way to widen those tiers to bring down those costs. I know that we had just I think there were, I don't remember how many there were 4 buckets. So could there be more buckets to ease the pain for folks? I don't.
Thank you, Councilor Richardson, for the question through you, Mayor. We were just talking about that. So as you'll recall, Council, there was a discussion of tiers, of a tiered rate. It was not favored at that time, but we could certainly come back and re-review the tiered structure with you and help you kind of work through what the rate impact would be at the end user in a subsequent work session. And as part of that, of course, going back to level of service is the driving decision that you make, right? So if we come back and we talk about tiers, we could also juxtapose the tiered data and the revenue that we'll generate from that against the level of service to be able to discuss that with you all again, if that's something that you might like to revisit. As you know, that would be a complete change in the structure of how you're assessing fees, but certainly something that we could look at again.
Thank you.
Sorry, can
Did you want to follow?
Yeah, just real quick. If I think just because we don't quite know where a cap would land, I mean, I would like to think that could be a good solution. But if it turns out that it's not the solution that we need, I think it might be nice to have an additional something to look at again. I don't know if others feel that way or not, but a backup plan, perhaps.
I think as as the Vice Mayor said, I think we all know that there are issues going on and that our system is simply does not have the capacity. Our infrastructure system doesn't have the capacity for the structures that sit upon it. And since all of this started and we've began to relook at this, I have driven around with Councilor O'Doherty during these rainstorms that we get in the afternoon. And as the Vice Mayor said, they may go 20 minutes, 18 minutes. And there's significant flooding, there's significant silt runoff in areas after 10, 20 minutes. And that's not about flooding. That's about we don't have the capacity that we need to move that water. So if it were the sink in my bathroom, I would get some Drano and clean that thing out, and then it would drain. And we've got to, number one, I want to see a program that's very aggressive with maintenance, and that's going to take a crew. We've got the trucks to use the system to wash this system out. There are roots in the system. There's stuff that's impeding flow. And I would like to see where we really focus on getting this system cleaned out, and it's going to take money. It is going to take money and thoughtfulness. So then back to the issue that brought a lot of this into this chamber, and that is there are outliers and in this system of charging where I found the cost, as I've said, rather jaw-dropping. And so what I want to see is a deep dive into the outliers and these exorbitant fees, and to try and figure out the through line of what's going on with those, so that we use that information, that close-up look at these fewer outliers, and see what can we do to adjust that. And is it caps? Is it looking at an entire different system, et cetera? But I'm receiving feedback from many people, even as we've done site visits, just trying to see what people are talking about, that many people are telling me that they understand the need, they want to participate, but it's some of these outliers that really make it difficult. And if we cap that, then I know that it's going to cap what we're capable of doing. I know that it's going to extend the time it's going to take us to do it. But we may have to adjust our ambitions in order to be able to do basic care. But we need to look at the capacity of our community to support this, and so that it becomes a win for all of us and that we make progress. But anytime that we get flooding, not major flooding where we're really experiencing catastrophic levels, but when we get flooding after a 10-minute, 20-minute rain, and it sits on streets for an hour and a half, that breaks down the streets. It breaks down the sidewalks. It tears at the integrity of our structures and our systems. So I think we need to look at some of that. I want to look at outliers, and I want a better idea about what's going on there and how could we get more of that to the center. So, yes, Vice Mayor.
And I should probably think about this differently. I really appreciate that you brought that up. I think all of us, I feel comfortable saying, we just don't want to put a business out of business or make a family break the bank, right? So however you all, as the experts, maybe it's not the tiered structure. That's what's on my mind, but maybe you all have other ideas. So if the tiered structure doesn't end up in that magic that you're going to work, I'm going to take that back and just say, I think that's the goal. Help us get there, maybe.
Councilor Shumway.
Thank you, Your Honor. First of all, I want to say 99% of the silt that's going into the Laramie River comes from Albany County, excluding the city limits. My home is one of the first homes within the city limits, and when you talk about these 10-minute, 20-minute rains or something like that, what I've noticed is the flood that comes in of continuous water past my house. So, see, I'm in an area that has new development with a complete storm water system. It's complete, and it's overwhelmed within minutes, and then, as you said, it flows down the streets, it stays on the street, it ruins the streets, ruins the sidewalks, and that's with a complete system. And that's with everything in place that we want to have to modernize the city of Laramie for a stormwater system. I don't think we can protect ourselves against flooding. And again, the flooding is compounded by the water flooding that comes from Albany County into our city limits. That's where I get millions and millions of gallons run past my house every time there's a big rainstorm. I'm not talking about 100-year storms or 1,000-year storms. I'm talking about the 2 or 3 that happen every year that bring torrents of water past my house. The first 2 or 3 times it happened, it caused $30,000 worth of damage to my property, but I fixed it because I found a solution. And I think everyone needs to find a solution, and the city needs to find a solution that does not include $130 million that doesn't fix the property damage problem with flooding.
Thank you, Councilor. City Manager, did you have something?
Mayor, I don't want to interrupt your conversation or your discussion, but I do want to offer this. I've heard a couple times now about outliers. We started off talking about the non-residential rate, and maybe, as Councilor O'Doherty suggested, $170 or beyond is an outlier. So I just wanted to put this out there. When it comes to fee, and hearing what Vice Mayor Richardson said, if you would define for us what those outliers are. Is it 170 or more for business, non-residential? And then give us some idea of what that looks like for residential. I noted in the cover sheet that as we've listened to public input over the last 6 weeks, seems like, my opinion is, the public has centered around $40 to $50 a month being unaffordable for residential customers, but I'll leave that to you to decide. But if you'd like us to go back and try to bring solutions, defining those outliers would be really helpful so that we know where kind of the starting point is for our analysis.
Councilor Vigil?
Thank you, Mayor. And this is something I've been thinking about too, is just defining those outliers. I think the 40 and 50 for residential is something that I've also been hearing, but I think for me, what I'd like to do is brainstorm a little bit more and also maybe hear from business owners a little more too, because the outliers that I hear from them is just way wild, like $800. Like, be serious. That's wild. So, but what are we defining as acceptable? I think is what I'm struggling with. And I don't know. I know we've heard from I think we've heard from a lot of the same ones in this space. And I've heard that, right? We've heard the $800, the $600, those kinds of things. I think I'd like to hear from more business owners overall.
Thank you. Councilor O'Doherty.
I've been looking at a residential cap of $30 because there aren't that many. The mean, the mode, and the median is about $10 and some cents. So that means if everybody paid $10 and some cents, you'd capture the same that we're getting for residential. But to me, it looks like the residential is just, it was like a third of the area. No, I can't remember the original graphs. But anyway, the revenue that comes from residential is not, it's not hurt as much by a cap of $30. whereas a cap of 30 or 50 or 170 or 200 for businesses, I have no idea how that would affect. And so, I think a cap for residential around 30 would take care of, a lot of that problem. But I think we still have to have so much discussion about, or so much information about non-residential. Like, how many people are paying all these amounts?
Councilor Lockhart?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, everyone that's spoken tonight. I'm for a tiered system myself also, with a flat rate of, say, $30, but not making someone pay more than they are now under the impervious schedule. So if someone was paying $11, I don't think they should pay $30. But if someone was paying $35, 30's max on a residential. The outliers, some of them are residents, but many of them being business owners, and businesses what make the economy. So we do need to take that into consideration. I don't think a business, the impervious term it brings another facet into this whole problem. So I think we just make it based on, and this is just an idea based on how much, big their parcel is, not impervious, just how big their parcel is, but have a max of $100, but not made more than they are now. And then if it takes longer for us to earn the money, we readjust our goals. But I think based on what I've heard from other people, because I talked to a gentleman the other day, it was $375, and he's like, $375 for my parking lot? And so I'm not saying that's the solution, but that's just some ideas I've been kicking around. So it may take us longer to do what we need to be doing, but at least we're not kicking the can down the road anymore, but we may have to just take it slower than what we were hoping for, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Just curious if we could, you all had asked for what that cap would be. If we could do maybe a slight range, what would it look like at 30, 40, 50? So we can kind of...
Councilor Newman?
I'm a numbers guy, so I need those numbers before we can even have conversations, right? Because, the outliers of, the 115,000, it's 34 people, but I need to know what those top and bottom are, and then for the businesses, I need to know what the top and number are. I'm gonna brainstorm and think outside the box for a minute, right? So we've been talking about a wind owner in town who doesn't want to pay this and might sue us and blah blah blah, right? And they don't pay maybe their share of things that they probably should in Laramie. Have we talked to them at all? Like, we know this is coming, right? Have we talked to them? Well, I mean, I'll call them out if you want me to, but
I think you need.
Are you asking about the university?
Yes.
We have had no correspondence from the university. I will tell you that myself and the Public Works Director, back in March, I believe, we are working, as you know, on a huge grant application to the NRCS for a 26-acre-foot detention facility that is needed up on the northeast side of this community to manage stormwater and not let it turn Reynolds Street into a river effectively. Although we have some creative ideas about creating Venice-like gondolas and maybe making some money off of it. We've identified roughly where the location of this huge detention facility needs to be, and it could be up in the area of Pilot Hill, the backside of the golf course, just up generally there where there's no development. Public Works Director and I did send a letter to the university back in March indicating that we are looking for a location site for that facility, and that based on the ordinance the City Council had passed, we understood the credit program would be available, and that if we could form a partnership around that with the university, that it would also allow for credits from their stormwater fee eventually. And also reminding them that we have a successful history in this community of partnering with the university for stormwater. We partnered with them on stormwater detention at the University of Wyoming Plaza site generally, and also many projects that have existed and were co-developed on Jacoby Golf Course. We have yet to receive any answer to that letter, but we did make that inquiry proactively in an effort to be a good neighbor and recognize that they have a unique potential to access the credit program, at least in my opinion, over other people who are smaller landowners in the community. So that's the only contact that we've had, Councilor Newman. And like I said, no response to that, but we certainly would love to work with them if they'd like to work with us. Yes? Oh, thank you. Brooks has reminded me of an important element. They were a standing member of the focus group that reviewed this and ultimately recommended to you. They had a seat on that committee. Now, to that point, I have to be careful because one thing I know from living in this community for over 30 years is the university is a large bureaucracy, right? And so how information flows on campus, I cannot speak to, but we did make sure that they had a seat on our focus group.
Councilor Newman.
I still think we should think outside the box, and, you know, if we did that in March, maybe we should do it again. And maybe we should reach out to Wyotech, and maybe we should reach out to some of these other people who are paying a huge amount that complained, right? And say, hey, like, help us fix this problem. What do you think's fair, right? And get that data along with the data that staff can present, and I think that would give us a better understanding, right? And basically, all we're doing is we're making our own focus group. And we can bring in the top residents, because we know we have a problem, right? Every time it rains, I have plenty of video of my street flooding, and I live on a dirt road. And I would love it to be paved sometime, because every time it rains, at the end of my driveway, I have to go buy rock, and I have to keep putting it in, right? So I think over the past, however long we've been talking about this, even the people who spoke against this always said something to the effect of make it fair. And I think that's our hard job, which means we should probably make some connections with some of these businesses and direct staff to make some businesses, some connections with that, but use some of our personal ones, right? I don't have a problem walking into somebody's office and asking them, hey, how much do you think? But we have to also remember, like, they were also directed to put in retention ponds on their properties, and they've put in some money, so we have to make sure that we get their input, like, how much money or how much water do they really think is going out from the property? How much money do they think is fair paying for this, right? Because I don't think anybody doesn't want to be, no, we don't want to help Laramie. So those are kind of my thoughts for right now.
Thank you. City Manager.
If I could just address a few of those things. It is stated in the cover sheet, and I hope that you all had a chance to read that, but I think it's an important point. You know, this community's been working on this issue for 20 years, and I've been working on this issue for 20 years. So I'm going to speak as your city manager for the last 16. Those communications with individuals have been made. A focus group is the industry standard for how you engage the community. That's been done, Councilor Newman. We reached out directly to the university. I raised this issue in the meeting that the mayor and I had with the president. Hey, we sent you a letter in March, we've yet to hear back. All we have heard back is a note from the trustees that there will be litigation. Communication is a two-way street. It involves somebody sending a message, and it involves somebody receiving that message and being willing to engage. So I'm just going to say, we want to engage, we want to be a good partner. That is what your credit program is about, right? It's about recognizing historic credits that could be granted for historic detention that has been built in this community, and also for future prospective detention, such as this large detention acreage that we need in the northeast part of town. But it takes willing partners to have those conversations, and the process that this city used to come to the point of recognizing that we need an enterprise fund to solve this problem was done according to every industry standard for public policy making, for public engagement. There's been no lack of that, but you can't force people to the table. We will continue doing that if the council continue to move forward with this enterprise fund. I also, when you're ready, Mayor, we can show you the numbers around, and I think Councilor Newman prompted me to pull this back up, the numbers about how many of our landowners are paying in the outlier categories, if you'd like to take a look at that.
Councilor Lockhart, and then...
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Manager. Took some notes earlier. Out of 10,002 landowners, 165 or more than 170. How about we create a subcommittee and we start calling those as council people? I'd do that. You know, just start calling, getting feedback, meeting with them. You know, maybe a different face, different voice, I don't know. Just another avenue to think about it. And then just get some more feedback to help us make our, you know, more ideas.
Councilor Vigil?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I also just, this concept of fair and fairness, right? It can be so subjective because I think what we heard as our current council is, you know, what we've been dealing with in how the last council decided to put this ordinance into place, you know, I think they thought that it was fair too, right? Because if you're thinking about, well, if everyone just pays like a flat $20, well, that's, I mean, if I have like a little townhouse compared to Walmart, maybe I don't think that's fair. Maybe I think they should pay more, and then that's fair, right? And so the word fairness is just so subjective, and I think we really have to think about that, because what we think personally is fair may not be fair to anyone out in this crowd, and vice versa, right? And so I think what I'd like this body to really consider is, you know, when people are saying fair, I think we also have to think about reasonable, what's also reasonable. And so I just want us to think about that as we move forward in these discussions, because I think past councils have, you know, have had good faith and have really considered like what's fair and what that means. So I don't know, just something to consider.
Councilor Shumway.
I think from what I hear from the public and from businesses is they want to have a guarantee that if we put in this system that their property will be protected from flooding. And if that's not the case, then what are we trying to do? Stop street damage? Stop silt going to the Laramie River? If we're not trying to protect commercial and private property, what is the purpose for the $130 million? And that's my question.
Councilors, Councilor O'Doherty.
So I would like to hear from staff when we talk about how much we spent in fiscal year 2022 on stormwater, what we spent on stormwater management, what kinds of things are included in that, because it's my understanding is that we're doing, like every time there's a storm in my street, there's all this, and it's still within the city, there's a bunch of gravel that now is filling the street. I assume that has to get picked up after a storm. So what are the things that we're paying for with the general fund now that is, was it 1.8 million a year right now? What kinds of things, so things that we're doing, if we weren't doing those things, you would have flooding all the time. You know, it's like when things are working well, people aren't seeing the good that's being accomplished. So can we hear about some of the things that you're doing? Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor, through you, I mean, generally, the stormwater stuff that's historically been paid through the general fund is a lot of the maintenance. So anytime we're going out and we're cleaning storm drains or inlets, the street sweeping, we allocate toward the stormwater. And then with the 2022 example we used, we allocated that staffing to that. You saw that 2.54, so how many people were really worked on that. And then capital projects also. So any capital projects that we did that year, I don't remember off the top of my head what they were. Equipment, so that, you're talking about your vac truck, your maintenance, your fuel for that truck, camera, equipment, software, things like that.
Detention ponds were a big one.
Detention ponds, yeah. So, yeah. So from June 2024 to July 2025, main lines and inlet cleaning, we spent 45 days doing that. So this was before the storm water or surface water utility was in play. So all out of the general fund. 45 days of main line and inlet cleaning, 16,000 feet jetted and cleaned, 750 inlets cleaned by hand, 250 inlets jetted and cleaned, 10,500 feet of CCTV camera work. On the channels and ponds, we did 8,000 feet of channels cleaned, 15 outlets cleaned, 2 ponds cut and graded, 2 inlets replaced in-house. Street sweeping occurred over 142 days, 820 hours, 4,800 miles of street sweeping, and we removed 568 cubic yards of debris from the roadways. So that's your maintenance
Thank
part
you.
of it. That doesn't count any of the capital stuff.
Thank you. Counselor Newman.
Staff, so back to my driveway. And this is a common question, right? That we get probably, I don't know if you get it in West Laramie or Counselor Freed if you do, but I'm going to pay into this fund, right? Monthly, whatever that number ends up to be. And then rain comes, washes out the end of my driveway. And the problem in West Laramie or any street in Laramie that isn't paved is, where's the street start? Where's the end of my driveway? Because the end of my driveway happens to be cement, right? And then it goes into the crushed asphalt and stuff. So if I pay into this fund, can I call the city and be like, hey, that rainstorm washed out my driveway again, and you guys bring me gravel again, or the the crushed pavement? And so specifically on like Van Horn is the street that everybody asked me this question. I'm like, I don't know. I just buy it myself.
Yeah, Mayor, through you, if it's in the right of way and there's washouts, give us a call and we'll send guys out. We spent a lot of time in West Laramie doing grading and things like that. And so, yes, if it's in the right of way, it's a city responsibility to take care of. So where that, you ask where that responsibility is, it's at your property line on a dirt road, right? You don't have the sidewalk to take care of, so it's at your property line. Everything on the other side of the property line's right away. If there's issues there, they can definitely give the street department a call and they'll come out and take a look.
Mayor, if I could
City Manager.
piggyback on that. One of the things I want to point out too is, we've been working on this for a really, really long time, as I've said. We've also been working on bringing stormwater drainage to areas of this community that don't have any for a very long time. And the general fund is simply never going to have sufficient resources to bring stormwater on its own to areas that do not have stormwater currently, like your ward or where you live, Councilor Newman. This enterprise fund was ready to make significant investments, $3.5 million, most of which would be infrastructure into West Laramie, to piggyback off of the work that we've been able to do in the last 12 years, just piecemealing what we could out of the general fund, little by little out there. There is no practical solution to bringing drainage to West Laramie outside of this enterprise fund. And I'm going to say that for the record, and I do believe that is absolutely a fair statement. We see property tax eroding. We have a ballot initiative to eliminate property tax or cut it by 50% coming up next year. Those are important sources of revenue to the general fund that we've had historically that we're not able to support stormwater drainage coming to unserved areas. And if they go away, I can tell you there is no plan to address stormwater that is going to replace this stormwater utility fund. And so I think it comes back to, what is the want of the community? What is the level of service this community wants? Do they want the level of service for stormwater that we have had historically? Or do we want a basic level, or a medium level, or a high level? And we can certainly keep doing what we've been doing if that is sufficient. It's just about what people want, and then if they're willing to pay what it costs for that.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate everyone's discussion on this. I think it's been really thoughtful, but I also want to remind us that we have voted to move forward to make changes. And so I worry about us kind of getting into the weeds of the details of what is paid, if it works, if it, because what we have told all of you is that we would move forward to try to make changes. And so I would like us to, if it's possible, to kind of bring ourselves to that point, and kind of continue to give them direction, and maybe it's finding out if you all feel like you have enough direction from us before moving.
Honorable Mayor, if I could address the council, please.
Please.
Just in the spirit of making sure that the record is correct tonight, fiscal year 2022 has been talked about a lot from a budgeting perspective, and I see us wanting to really think that that number is the true baseline investment in the general fund for storm drainage. That is an investment at a point in time, and I do not consider $1.8 million to be the normal investment of the general fund in storm drainage. When I look back for that year in particular, that is truthful. It is $1.8 million. As you know, we have had some increased collections of sales and use taxes, and so I just want to make sure that what is really normal for the general fund goes on the record, and that is the storm cleaning, the equipment, the staff that Brooks is talking to you about, those maintenance activities. That is what I would consider normal from a financial perspective. And I just thought that might be helpful for the conversation tonight.
Thank you, Director Wade. And thank you, Vice Mayor, for kind of bringing us back. We're here to start to look at possible solutions that we see, and initially we started out talking about fee structure and looking more closely at the fee structure. And then we've gotten into a lot of other things, but it's that if we can direct what we want next, what is the data we want next? And for me, I want to take a look at the 165 individuals. I want to, and I'm not sure that calling all 165 is, but somehow I want to look at that and see the amounts, and I'd like to entertain some caps, both on residential and on commercial, and to get an understanding of what would that cap or adjustment mean to the level of service and to the length of time that is involved in completing service. So I'd like to assume that our median average fee is fair, and to look at these outliers more closely and to see what are solutions or things we can do. If we have to make financial adjustments, what is the meaning in service and in time? Director.
Mayor, just to clarify, as I heard you talking, you said 165.
I was looking.
Yeah, you said 165 individuals. It's 165 parcels. So
correcting
so
me
in
on
that 165 is the 35 that the city owns, right?
Oh, so that's even less.
It's by parcel.
Okay, so parcel, and yeah. So, is there any further direction. May I go to public comment? Thank you to the individuals here who have been so patient and attentive. Is there any public comment at this time on this agenda item? Yes, sir. And if you could state your name for the record, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Ben Hunke. So fair and reasonable, I really like what you guys are talking about there. You know, I think with fair and reasonable, my property, I sit 8 feet below Riverside. Fair and reasonable would be instead of $30, since you don't put any water on it, maybe $10, you know, fair and reasonable. And then, you know, with businesses, I thought businesses, either $100 was great, you know. I think, and not try and make all the money at once. Let's try and make this over 30 years or 40 years, and the community would much appreciate that instead of all being done in 10 years, you know. I think that a long-term plan is better than a short-term plan. And I just think that maybe the city shouldn't pay on their parcels because we're going to pay on their parcels. So we should make the schools and the city exempt, YDOT exempt, fairgrounds exempt. You know, I heard the fairgrounds was going to be $5,000, so they upped the fire training facility. So now our fire training budget is going to have to be cut to pay more rent for the fire training facilities. I think we need to think about what we're doing and just make it, you know, let's not charge, oh, the city's paying. Well, who's going to pay in the end? We are, you know, but we don't need all this money right now. I get there's a need for some money, and if we need more money, maybe we go to the community and put it on a ballot and vote, and maybe the community will back even more money. That, okay, now we've got more money, plus we've got this fee that we've created, and so we're actually going the right direction, and we have the community's support. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Other public comment on this agenda item? Thank you. Back to council. Councilor Shumway.
Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate the comments from Mr. Hunke. I think a good solution would be to put this on the 7th cent and have the public tell us whether or not they want to fund the entire cost of stormwater drainage with a 7th cent. And then that way it would be clear to us what they want to do. Just one more comment. Let's suppose we take the first 2 years of collections and fix Van Buren Street to where it has perfect storm drainage and perfect maintenance. Do you think your street's going to still not be flooded and your property along Van Buren will not be flooded when a flood comes? Because I think it will.
Thank you, Councilor Shumway. And I have not perceived that we are making any guarantees that things won't flood, because we cannot make those guarantees. But we can clean out the system and maintain the system, and there are areas, we do live in a basin, and we are surrounded by higher elevation, and we're like a funnel. And there are collector places where we are going to have to address that, where it does come down from the hills and it comes down from the higher elevations, and we know where those areas are. And right after a rain, they're going to be the same areas where it sits. And it's going to sit until finally it can get through the pipes and out to the river. And we know that that happens after a 10-minute rain. So there's the big flooding, but then there's the everyday maintenance, and that's what we have got to take care of. And I don't think we can offer any guarantee to anyone that it won't flood. And I was in Fort Collins when the flood happened then, and sat on the porch watching cars float down the street in front of my house. And they knew that there was a secondary canal system they needed to add for overflow. For years, they knew that. But when that rain came, that big 100-year rain, it could not handle it. And it did flood. And it took life, and it took precious materials from the library. It really caused a tremendous amount of damage. And after that time, they did put in that secondary canal system. But I'm wanting to advocate for us to take care of it now, so at least we have basic maintenance going on and that we're contributing enough that we can actually do basic maintenance. And the only difficulty with it, putting it all on a tax, is it can be so variable that you cannot adequately predict what will happen, and then a 7 cents is going to be a limited. It's limited, so. City Manager.
Mayor, we would like to recap so we can move forward.
Thank you.
And we want to make sure that we understand sort of what we're going to work on between now and October and bring back data to you. Okay?
Thank you.
So our group here compared notes. We heard that you would like to revisit a tiered fee structure. So we will bring that estimate back for you to look at. That will also touch upon your discussion around reasonableness, right? Because it changes a little bit, like who pays what depending on size of lots and that sort of thing, or amount of development, I should say. Then also, we will look at, for residential, we'll look at 30 to 50 being sort of the place of reasonableness, as long as it doesn't exceed, that level. And for non-residential, we'll look at 170 and above, and try to figure out if we can bring caps or something to contain the costs for the outliers, but we'll treat, I'd say 35 to 50 and above as an outlier for residential, and anything above 170 as an outlier for non-residential. Are we tracking with you?
Councilor Freed?
Thank you, Mayor. City Manager, could maybe we just add extending the life, if we use the current ordinance that is paused,
Okay.
and the current rate collections, but we just extended, 15 years, what that would look like.
Okay, so use the current fee structure, but we ramp up the level of service over a longer period of time of, say, 15 to 20 years.
Yeah, correct.
Right? Okay.
Councilor Newman.
And if you could, the page, I think it's 23 in our packet, the tiered rate structure, if you could give us an overall with those prices as well, because they're already on there.
I'm not sure I followed you there.
So there's the tiered prices that are already in our packet. Could you give us the long-term kind of, like if we ramped it up over 25 or 30 years using these numbers as well?
Okay.
And then, just to go on record, I have brand-new storm sewage in front of my house within the last 2 years. So I have no idea if it would flood or not.
Yeah.
Mayor, through you, I think we need some clarification on when you say extend the time. The water master plan, or the stormwater master plan, has identified $130 million worth of projects that need to be done, okay? The budget that we brought forward, the capital plan, was like 6 years. That's not, so when you say extend, I'm not sure, does that make sense what we're talking about?
I think they mean 60.5 million in 15 years.
Okay, because right now, I think the 10-year plan is that 60 million.
Yep. So what if that 60 million went to 15 years? Yes.
I appreciate that clarification. I want to point this out as well. Keep in mind, council, we will do this for you, but remember inflation, right? And remember cost of service over time. So we can we could spend 60.5 million over 15 years, right? And that has a rate effect, but you're balancing out against future inflation, and so keep that in mind and ruminate on that, I guess, and we'll come back and talk about it in October because I know it's getting late.
Thank you. Next, is there any public comment? Oh, no, we don't do that. We go into, thank you to the public for being here. Now we're going to go into city council updates. Councilor Freed, are you ready?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I have no council updates from last time, but have some boards and commissions this week. So I have 3 boards and commissions the next couple days, so I'll have a good report next time. Thanks.
Thank you. We're still in session, please. Councilor Lockhart.
I do not have any updates. The planning commission did not happen this last week. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Newman.
No updates.
Vice Mayor Richardson.
Thank you. Beautification Committee is still continuing to work on lighting on the downtown corridor. Some of us attended Monday's Housing Coalition meeting where the presentations were kind of brought to fruition, and haven't quite determined what next steps are, but it was great to hear the work that had been done already. Let's see. And just a number of housing, sorry. We are postponing our DDA meeting because we don't have a lot on the agenda, but we have received applications for the redevelopment of downtown and have started ranking those. So that is it, I think.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. Just 2 quick ones. I had LPAC this afternoon. They are a small and mighty team, so they've been going through a lot of transition, kind of as I've been noting over the past few months. I just wanted to give Ismael Dominguez a shout out. He's working really hard, and it's a small crew, so he's doing some good stuff. And then just real quick, October 15th at 11:30 will be our next Laramie Town Gown Association meeting. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Shumway.
The Laramie Youth Council met on Wednesday of last week, and they elected officers and set goals, and are looking forward to recruiting a few more people to enlarge the Laramie Youth Council.
Very good, and congratulations on getting that together. Councilor O'Doherty.
The Laramie Advisory Commission on Disabilities didn't have a quorum, but we talked about some of the community outreach that they've already done. And then the Community Juvenile Services Board, they just don't meet very much. I thought I missed a meeting yesterday. They just kind of meet randomly, so I'm trying to catch up with them. That's it.
Thank you. Let's see. Councilor O'Doherty and I attended the Finance Committee, and we just wanted to comment that the descriptions that are going into the budget spreadsheets, we are finding that they are more and more identifiable, the abbreviations, that we're really able to see what it's about, and we're having to ask fewer questions. So that was good. I was invited to attend the International Student Barbecue, and I did that on Wednesday, and sat with a lot of the students, and it was a very interesting time. And then on Monday, the 8th, we had the final meeting of the Albany County Housing Coalition, where the 4 different work groups gave their final report. And so we will continue then working with the Albany County Housing and Land Trust that came out of that. And that's it for me. And so councilors, City Manager.
Would it be okay if I give you a few updates? I wanted to let you know that tomorrow, Council, I'll be driving to Sheridan for the Wyoming Business Council meeting. The reason for that, and Mayor, that reminds me, I need you to sign my travel request. In any case, the Business Council will be presenting to the board tomorrow afternoon. They've used Laramie as a test case or guinea pig, I guess you could say, for a process that they will likely use into the future, we understand, which is to kind of look at past business-ready community grant programs and try to identify how those have rippled out through the community, what effects they've had, what the return on that investment has been. So your staff and the Laramie Chamber of Business Alliance staff have done a lot of work in the last 6 months, providing 20 past years of data, and so I'll be up there tomorrow, eager to see how the board receives that data, but it'll be an interesting exercise and maybe something all communities will do in the future.
Are they presenting that, are they recording that? Sorry.
I believe that meeting will be available by Zoom, and you can go on the Business Council website and look at that. Director Enzi from LCBA is going up as well to be there in person, and then we'll have various members of LCBA and city staff available on the Zoom call, so I think you can get on that too. And then also the Wyoming Smart Capital Network, which the city was the founding community to create in, I think in 2009 or 10. They will be hosting a retreat as well on Friday to plan for the future. That group, which the city started, involves a number of municipalities around the state. We leveraged a federal grant of $13.1 million that we've circulated, I think, 5 or 6 times to support businesses and provide collateral support for them. We're at the end of that $13.1 million of recirculating 5 times in the community, or in the state, excuse me, and so we're going to be doing some strategic visioning with the other cities in Casper on Friday to see what this program is going to look like in the future and how it will benefit our respective communities, hopefully, going forward. So I wanted to give you a couple updates on those 2 things.
Thank you very much, City Manager. Councilor Vigil.
Mayor, if I could, if folks are done with updates, can I just give a shout out real quick? I'd just like to thank our city manager. To be working on the stormwater issue for 20 years feels really wild to me and challenging. In my day job, when I work with a student who keeps having the same issue over and over again, at some point I get a little frustrated. And so this feels like that, but on a much bigger scale. And so I'm just continually impressed with really all of the department heads too, just for their professionalism and just sticking with us. And I know you probably go home and have some wine at night. I would. And so, yeah, just thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think that was a great shout out, and I'm in total agreement. So let's finish by taking a look at the agenda for next week. Is there any requests to move something from the consent agenda to the regular agenda? No. Councilor Freed.
I have a question, because I've learned it's important to ask. City Manager, just the 9F, the award of the energy retrofit grant for exterior lighting upgrades, you know, if that's just another way, if that's a shout out for Director Bork getting funding for, or the city getting funding to do some of those things, if it's worth moving, but that also might not be what it is. And
Yes, it is, and it's totally your call if you'd like to move it.
What number is that?
9F.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to move that if that's possible.
I think it's important for the public to know the kind of work and money that people do bring in.
Yeah, where the funding comes from. So.
Anything else?
Mayor, just a quick question on that. Where would you like to place that on the regular agenda?
Make it first. Up front. Yeah.
I was going to say, actually, Director Bork might be gone next week. I don't know for his conference, but so I
Will be, but I think we've got other folks who can see.
So we'll just put it first. Item 11. And then no other changes. And looking at the regular agenda, any comments? Okay. Counselor Newman.
City Manager, could we have an executive session on an update on what's going on with the fire department? I've had a few people reach out to me, and I was like, obviously I can't give them any information, but I was like, those are kind of good questions. I'd like to know that myself. So could we get, just kind of update what's going on with that? And
I'll ask the city attorney, is he still on the line? Yes. We'll need to see if legal counsel's available.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
But yes.
Yeah, or sometime, if we can do that.
Well, thank you, thank you. Then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for your input.